October 26, 2004. The first thing on the agenda is to approve the agenda.
So move.
I'll second.
We have a change in the agenda, just so, is there,
Okay. On the agenda, we're moving item A. It'll become a new D, is my understanding correct?
D, it'd be
D.
replacing D.
5D. All right. And with that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next is to approve the consent agenda. There are two items there. One to approve the meeting minutes of October 22nd, and the other to forward a favorable recommendation to the Township Board for the plat approval of ravines at Inwood Phase 4.
I'll move.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. At this time, take public comment. I'll open the public comment period. Again, we take comments only if there are specific questions or technical answers that you feel that you need to obtain. You need to address those with the staff, either in writing or with a visit with them in the office. But with that, I'll open the public comment period. You can come forward to the podium, state your name and your address.
Is this, okay. Sorry, folks, I forgot my cheaters, so. Good evening. Chris Cutzley, 2894 Fingers Drive. I'm here to offer feedback on my experience as a neighbor to the Coit Flats project. About 7 weeks ago, my neighbor was on Facebook, and that's how she learned for the first time that not one, but two massive apartment buildings were going up 25 feet from her property line. She was completely blindsided, as were all of us on Fingers. If any of you had been surprised in this same way, I'm sure you would have had the same types of questions that we had. How could this have happened without anybody on the street having any knowledge, especially adjacent property owners? How is it permitted for a 50-foot tall building to be sited in close proximity to single-family homes and yet a football field away from Plainfield? What happened to the good principles of design that we saw in the Reimagine plan? And how are we, as neighboring homeowners, being protected against light and noise pollution, increased traffic flow and parking, privacy intrusions, and stormwater runoff? These are all legitimate, reasonable, and entirely foreseeable questions. But in contrast to developers who had months of exchanges with staff about the project, we were kept in the dark with no opportunity to engage in dialogue with decision makers, to understand what was happening, to ask follow-up questions, or to clarify our concerns. As far as I'm aware, no members of the public have had any transparency into how this project was evaluated against the site plan review standards in the zoning ordinance, or to the extent to which bonuses and administrative departures were applied. We remain entirely in the dark. For a project that is receiving a $4.5 million tax incentive, the lack of transparency is pretty remarkable. We asked questions and we were dismissed. We were told that we didn't pay attention 3 years ago when we had our one opportunity to object during the community input for the Reimagine plan. That characterization is not only condescending, it also does us a disservice. We all had awareness of the Reimagine plan, liked the spirit and intent that's so clearly woven throughout it, and so had no reason to object 3 years ago. What is objectionable is how the Reimagine plan has been interpreted and applied in the Coit Flats plan. We simply want to know what happened. How did we end up with that plan that we have on Coit Flats? How did it get from the vision that's applied in the Reimagine plan to what we actually ended up with there? And the reason I won't stop asking these questions is because there is another property in that same corner, also without Plainfield frontage, which is the site of Newton's Gym. What is to prevent that property from being redeveloped in a way that is even more objectionable to what has happened on Coit Flats, that goes higher yet? I've heard staff casually dismiss the possibility, but I want to know definitively What would prevent an 80-foot tall residential development from being approved by right? All the developer needs to do, evidently, is threaten the township with a lawsuit. As neighbors, we erred 3 years ago not by being apathetic, but by assuming good intent. The reimagined plan promises good design and careful site plan review, and we entrusted the township to deliver on those promises. 3 years ago, whether or not you knew it, we had your back. But now, when it comes to implementing the plan, it doesn't seem that you have ours. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Just a couple quick comments. I guess I just want to piggyback on that a little bit. I felt like in this process,
Address, please.
Tom Cutsley, 2894 Fingers Drive. In this process, it felt like everyone we met with told us we needed to go to a later meeting. Everyone we met with said, "You're telling the wrong people. We don't deal with this. You don't deal with this." The scope of this was for the staff, and I understand that. But if we go to the staff, they're telling us our hands are essentially tied by the zoning. So we really can't do anything about it either. So for me, the question really is, and the way I understand it now, I don't know, I don't claim to know everything about planning, but I can read. And from what I can read, with mixed-use zoning, you can have an 80-foot tall structure, up to 100 with bonuses. And in that same space, in our space, a new administrative departure has been made that also eliminates the need for setbacks. So that's also compounding the problem. So to me, that tells me if that property my wife referred to was sold, redeveloped, I don't see why or how anyone here could prevent a 80, maybe even higher foot structure from being 25 feet from our property line. To me, that's a problem. And if your hands are tied, the developers are, or I'm sorry, the planners are tied, then maybe we need to reinvestigate how we've zoned this. And really, that's my challenge to you, to think about, is this appropriate? Because I can tell you right now, it's not. And I want you to think about that. And if that resonates with you, and I hope it does, then as you're reimagining, and I know there's also plans for looking at rezoning, I'd like it to be looked at, because to me, you've put yourself in a position, and it's been mentioned in some of the numerous meetings we've been in, that, well, if we changed it now, we open ourselves up to being sued. Well, if you're in that position, that isn't a good position to feel like you're in. And it's not a good position for us to feel like we're in, where no one wants to hear us, no one could do anything about it, even if they did hear us. So that's my challenge, and we're happy to follow up, and sadly for you, we probably will. So we're not going away until we know what is possible right behind us, and does anyone care to do anything about it? Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? All right, I'm closing the public comment period. At this time, we'll move to the agenda items. And the first item on the agenda is site plan review. And Brian, you want to read the applicant information?
Project name is Mustin Construction. Applicant is Mr. Phil Mustin with Mustin Construction. Project address 3955 Butternut Drive Northeast. Permanent parcel number 41-10-14-476-001. Size of site 17,000 square feet. Project description and action request of the Planning Commission to grant site plan approval to convert a single-family home into an office at 3955 Butternut Drive.
Okay, is staff want to introduce this, or?
Sure. This one may seem familiar to you. Just about a month ago, they were here for a rezone of this property. The board approved that, I believe, at their November 11th meeting. So the way that this goes is that will not become effective for 30 days after publication. So there will be a bit of time. So there's a condition of approval here that addresses the site plan not being fully approved until that date. Okay. Just going back into a little bit more detail, some of you that, Robin's on the ZBA, they were also at the ZBA on November 19th, I believe it was. The ZBA approved variances from the buffer on the west side or southwest side of the property and then the rear lot line to accommodate parking. And then, so essentially what it is they got 2 foot to 1 foot on the south side and 1 foot on the rear lot line. So you can see that on the landscaping plan. And I'll leave it at that on that part. Elizabeth, do you have anything you want to add to that on that part? Okay. Just to refresh you a little bit, some of the issues that came up during the public hearing, during the road rezone were traffic, primarily people trying to cut through to go to the service drive for Trinity Health, as well as the Northland Drive curb cut for this property. We did follow up with the King County Road Commission on that after the meeting. I talked to Tim Hogsma down there. There is a sign out there already that says it's not a cut through, so that's about as far as they're going to go. They're not going to put a business sign out there saying the business is over this way because it's a slippery slope for them to do that. The curb cut on MDOT in the right of ways, that's part of MDOT's. It's very unlikely they would ever approve something like that. In fact, our experiences, they're pushing us to close these. And so we suspect that it has to be closed no matter what, and that's part of the site plan approval for this tonight. Lastly, we did investigate whether that through route could go through. The time for that probably would have been when we rezoned for Trinity Health PUD back in the day. That bird has flown now. You're getting into some replatting, road reconstruction, and probably widening of the existing service drive. So we did some exhaustive research into that, so if you have any questions on that, let me know. Next thing I want to tackle, and in the motion, the recommendations for staff, we originally thought they could not do the off-street parking. They can, and so they really just need 10 spots. It should be 10, in the motion it says 9 spots, it should be 10. The gist of it is they are short 1 parking spot for this site. Staff is recommending that the board grant them a waiver on that. We think based on the use, it's going to suffice for what they need. We've talked to the applicant, he's comfortable with that. I think in general, the area is probably going to be overparked anyways, so we're relatively comfortable with them moving forward less 1 spot. And that's your purview to grant that. Next issue I wanted to bring up for you is sanitary sewer. There's 2 ways to go by. One's coming off a brewer, more expensive. It's got some gradient problems and might come out of the ground, so there's a little bit of challenge there. The other alternative is to come through West Michigan Dermatology to the southwest. They are working with the applicant, and I believe they have an easement or are in the process of getting an easement. But if that gets delayed for a time, the township engineer is willing to give them a waiver for roughly a year to use the existing septic until the sanitary sewer gets constructed. Last, I think that's all I have for notes. We do have 4 conditions of approval. There's a small minor thing I need to have updated on the landscaping plan on the front yard. If you have any questions, let me know.
Mr. Munson is here this evening. Is there anything you want to add to what the staff has presented? Again, name and address.
Good evening. I'm Doug Stolzenberg, XL Engineering, on behalf of Phil and Maeda. Just a couple of things I want to add to what Pete just explained. Um, The, we are working with West Michigan Dermatology. We have a verbal commitment to grant the easement so that a small diameter force main can pump from the office building over to the gravity sanitary sewer. We don't have the easement in hand. I think I heard Pete say that we could ask for a waiver to be to remain on the drain field instead of pumping to the sewer, but it's only good for 1 year. I was going to ask you if you could see your way clear to approve either the force main or the gravity, or the drain field. But if it's only good for 1 year, I doubt that that sewer is going to come up Butternut Street from the south. That neighborhood would have to get together and petition the township for a sewer extension right up the middle of the street, very costly construction project. And with the kind of soils they have there, I just don't see them asking for that, certainly not within a year. So if it is a year limitation, then I think we'll stay with the plan that is submitted with the force main across dermatology. The parking, yes, we need 10 spaces. 9 spaces are shown on site. And then we've shown one possible parking space here on that little stub street that goes nowhere. Kent County Road Commission, I got a letter from Wayne Harrell at the Kent County Road Commission that basically stated, the street is not going to go through. It's a permanently dead end as it stands, and there's nothing that would prohibit someone from parking there. So in our site plan submittal, we've counted 1 space there to get to the 10. The new information that I wanted to add was we also have been in communication with West Michigan Derm about possibly sharing a couple of parking spaces. And I do have a email from our contact person over there that says that they would be agreeable to share a couple of spaces if the unlikely event would ever happen that we would run short of parking. So that's brand new of like, I don't know, 48 hours ago. So I didn't even make Pete aware of that, but he suggested we make that contact. We did follow through on that. Any questions?
Well, let's start with Jack. Jack, do you have any questions?
No, actually, I see this as a relatively benign use, and I have no questions.
Is the amount of parking shown on there adequate for the majority of the expected visitors? Is
Yeah,
10 adequate for what you're doing?
Is it adequate? Yeah, we believe it's adequate. Again, it meets the, certainly with the agreement that we can share a couple of spaces with West Michigan Derm. It meets the township ordinance, and Phil and Maida are, I mean, they know their business. They know how much traffic is generated, and they're comfortable with the number of spaces.
Other questions?
Robin?
Pete, there's 2 other lots that may be sold as commercial business. What of the potential future sewage concerns there?
I may have misspoke when I said, did I say butternut or did I say brewer earlier, Doug? Is that what you're referring to? Because I was referring to sewer on brewer.
Yeah, there's sewer in Brewer. which is, I'm going to call it east, it's not due east, but east of this site, I don't know, like 300
5,
feet?
600, maybe 5, something like that.
500 feet?
Yeah.
There is a project that's been talked about on the vacant land just to the east of here. I did make contact with the engineer that is investigating that possibility. After looking at the sewer in Brewer, extending it gravity over to this intersection, it's only about 3 to 4 feet deep. So that really doesn't work gravity. Could we pump it over to Brewer? Yeah, it's quite a bit further, and we've almost got an agreement with West Michigan Durham. So that's kind of the status of that, I guess.
Thank you.
Anything else? Janelle?
No questions.
I guess my only thought or concern is that 10th spot on Butternut, the little stub there. Are we sort of opening ourselves up to multiple cars being parked there or people starting to park on the street? Could that become chaotic at some point? That, I guess, and again, I don't think most of the time you're probably going to have that many people there, but on the occasion, how would that be marked as one spot and they don't park parallel to it? So all of a sudden you got 2 people parked there. Are we creating problems there, and how would that be addressed? I don't know.
So, I don't think, because this is a dead-end stub, not a through street, is gonna be a significant problem. I can see, maybe a person or 2 parking along the street beyond that. At this point, we haven't had an issue with it. If we do, what we have done is reached out to the road commission to put no parking signs in those areas. It's up to their discretion at the end of the day of whether or not they're gonna allow parking in that area.
That was the only question I had.
Okay, I have nothing to add or to question. Thank you very much. At this time, I will take a motion on the development or redevelopment.
I move that the Planning Commission grant site plan approval for the conversion of a single-family home at 3955 Butternut Drive to an office, subject to the following conditions of approval. 1, the applicant shall close the driveway onto Northland Drive, subject to approval by the Michigan Department of Transportation. 2, the applicant shall provide a photometric plan and an updated landscaping plan prior to the issuance of a building permit. 3, site plan approval becomes valid after effective date of the rezoning approval. And that was the 30-day stipulation, correct? Okay. And 4, per section 32.07B, the Planning Commission has determined that in reducing the required parking from 11 to 10 parking spaces, the intensity of use and lesser parking requirements will not adversely affect available parking for surrounding uses.
Do we have support?
Support.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. On to new item 5B, grant site plan approval for Christian Healthcare Services. And Brian, do you want to read the applicant information?
Project name, Christian Healthcare Centers. Applicant, Mr. Matthew Hall, Copper Rock Construction. Project address, 3272 Platinum Street. Permanent parcel numbers 41-10-35-152-009. Size of site 1.31 acres. Project description and action requested of the Planning Commission to grant site plan approval to construct a 5,757 square foot medical office building at 3272 Platinum Street.
Okay, from staff, who has this one?
Got it?
All right.
Fairly simple site plan in front of you. It is the last remaining lot. Well, there's one other vacant lot to the northwest on Platinum from this original kind of office park development we did maybe 10, 15 years ago. Essentially, this lot is, just so you know, background information, it's irregular shape. Is one time it looked a lot more like a square lot, but then when they were defining the boundaries of where waste was from the waste management site, they found more on this property, so they had to adjust it. And so that's why it looks the way it is at this point. The only major issue that came up was the entry drive there. The fire department needs the lane width to be 20 feet. I believe they're currently 16. That gives the property owner two options, or the developer two options, either to remove the island or widen that. They have an agreement, or are working on an agreement with the neighbor to do a shared driveway. Therefore, we have a condition in there, we have a shared driveway agreement to protect both property owners in the future and for maintenance and those types of things. The other issue that came up is landscaping. We do require landscaping on the perimeters of the property. They're showing it, I believe, on one side. They will have to put it on the rear and the east side and somewhat in the front, if I recall correctly. Eventually, this property, I know it's pretty open behind them. That was one of their concerns about landscaping, if I recall correctly. Eventually, Grand Rapids Gravel will develop the rest of this property to the east. I expect that it will look better in the long run if it is landscaped appropriately. I believe that was it. I think we have a couple other standard conditions, one regarding a dumpster notes, and that's about it. So if you have any questions, please let me know, and we'll go from there.
Is the proponent here would like to address the board? Again, name and address.
Yeah, I'm Jack Barr with Niederveld, thank you. Pretty simple site plan. Pete stole my thunder a little bit. Not much to say other than we're happy to enter the community and happy to comply with the 4 conditions of staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's start with Janelle. Do you have any questions?
I don't, pretty straightforward and looks like.
Brian?
No major questions. Impressed somebody found a use for such a unusually shaped lot. That's actually a bonus, I think, that we can take something that isn't maybe conducive, but we find a use for it, so I do appreciate that.
Robin?
I have no questions.
Dennis?
Comment?
Jack?
Welcome to the community.
I have a technical question. It's immediately adjacent to the old landfill. Is there any involvement here by the state in terms of approving use of the site?
Not right at this point. There was directly when this was developed, and there's oversight, and they're still negotiating with Waste Management over many other issues with that site. But in terms of the development of this site, it should be a clean site, and I'm assuming they did their due diligence on the environmental.
All right, then I will take a motion to approve the site plan.
I move that the Planning Commission grant site plan approval for 5.757 square foot medical office building at 3272 Platinum Street, subject to the following conditions of approval. Number 1, the applicant shall provide a cross-access agreement for approval by the Community Development Department for the shared entrance driveway. Number 2, the applicant shall modify the entrance drive subject to approval by the Township Fire Department. Number 3, the applicant shall provide a revised landscaping plan subject to the approval of the Community Development Department. And number 4, the applicant shall add a note to the site plan indicating that dumpsters shall be enclosed and gated according to the Plainfield Charter Township zoning ordinance requirements.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. All right, we'll move on to the new Agenda 5C, site plan review for Meyer Sports Complex. And Brian, again, the applicant information, please.
Project name, Meyer Sports Complex Expansion. Applicant, Mr. Mike Weiler, sorry about that. West Michigan Sports Commission. Project address 3300 10 Mile Road Northeast. Permanent parcel number 41-10-02-100-013. Size of site 79.3 acres total. And project description and action requested of the Planning Commission to grant site plan approval for the expansion of Meyer Sports Complex to include 2 new softball fields, bleachers, playground, concessions building, 20 pickleball courts, additional parking, and related infrastructure.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. Yeah, so this is kind of a fun one. It is the expansion of the Meyer Sports Complex for 2 additional softball fields and pickleball courts, which I know lots of people are excited about. An expansion of the parking area as well as a playground, and yeah, related drives and infrastructure. Additionally, as part of this project, in the spring, they will be improving the entrance to this facility and Premier Park. They share an entrance. So we're excited about that. There, in terms of site plan review, there is a man-made wetland on site. The applicants have researched this and they've determined that it is not a regulated wetland, so they won't have to go through the Eagle permitting process for that. We have recommended that they double check with Eagle on that before they do any significant site work. Yeah, we're excited to see this expand. It was approved during the 2012 PUD original approval, so we've known this was coming, and we're excited to see it move forward.
Is there anyone from the West Michigan Sports Commission wanting to address? Good. Again, name and address.
My name is Brandon Simon with Progressive Companies at 1811 4 Mile Road. Just wanted to talk through high level a couple of the things that we're looking at doing here. So as Elizabeth mentioned, the project was originally approved in 2012. The plan today largely reflects that originally approved plan. One of the notable changes is that we originally showed a practice infield area, kind of in the area where the proposed pickleball courts are now. So that's been switched over to a different use. Other than that, still the quad of fields to the south and expanded parking. I did want to note that since we've submitted this, we on this plan show Championship Field 9 and Field 10 as being in this set. We've been discussing with West Michigan Sports on whether or not Field 11 was going to happen now or remain future, and we are proposing to loop Field 11 into this plan set now. So understand that we'll have to get updated plans to the township to include that, but I wanted to make sure that was clear. And then for the entrance work as well, the entrance work is still something that we're looking into. We recently have had some conversation with Kent County Road Commission and the city of Grand Rapids, and we're looking at whether or not signal optimization is more appropriate or signal optimization and also do the lane widening. So there will still be work at the entrance to make sure that that operates a little more smoothly. But that area is getting a closer look after some additional talks with the road commission. As far as the project, I think you hit on it. We've got new baseball fields, 20 pickleball courts. There's 315 parking spaces. Stormwater on site is generally going to the southeast as it does today. It will be managed via underground stormwater detention system. We wanted to put that under the parking area to try to maximize parking because that's something that they're short on now on game days. So we went with the underground route to try to build that parking lot out as much as possible. And then we will be extending water and sewer back to the new championship softball field as well. There's concessions and bathroom buildings in there, so needed to get service back there. And I think the other notable thing is the sidewalk back to the new quad. You'll notice is quite large. It's 20 feet wide. We've been working with the fire department as well and wanted to make sure that we had adequate access for emergency vehicles back to the new fields for game days and injuries and stuff that may happen back there. From a high level, that's the project. I would also note that we have been working with the West Michigan Mountain Bike Association. There's a portion of that existing trail that is impacted by our grading after a closer look. So we've been working with them on a temporary reroute for that while we're under construction, just to make sure that bike traffic doesn't commingle with construction traffic. Happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Okay, well, let's start with Janelle.
Questions?
Brian?
The pickleball courts, those are outdoor,
Yep.
correct? Okay. Can those be used for anything else other than pickleball, or are they pretty much specific to that?
We have talked with West Michigan Sports about possibility of having like food truck events and stuff out there. So I wouldn't say that they're going to be limited solely to pickleball, but that's certainly the main intended use. Yep.
That's all the questions I have.
Robin?
I really like the underground water storage. I did see the outlet. Is that near the wetland area?
It is, it's down on the southeast corner, so on this page here, we see existing irrigation pond and existing detention pond, and it discharges currently just south of that existing detention pond, and the proposed outlet for the new system is in the same spot.
So the delay in the surge, in the storage, and then remediating out through that outlet, that's like over a day or 2 days?
Yeah, the system fills up and then it slowly releases over a period of 24 to 48 hours per the township stormwater standards. But yeah, it would trickle out via a smaller orifice, usually a couple-inch orifice, so that flows from the smaller events are reduced pretty dramatically. Yep.
I think it's great that you've integrated that into the parking area. One last question. The parking area was reduced a little bit because of the wetlands, is that right?
Not necessarily the wetlands. So there's a lot of heavy woods on site. Just trying to maintain that as it's a great feature for the site and that area. So we didn't want to push into the woods too far to the south, and the grading also gets very tricky. Once you start to go south further than what we show here, it drops off pretty fast. So we're trying to avoid that and retaining walls and stuff. Yep.
Dennis?
I don't know if I'm just overthinking it, but the proximity between the pickleball courts and the softball field for home runs, is that gonna be an issue for people playing pickleball and getting hit?
No, I think that's a fair point. We do have, so the pickleball fences are higher on the back sides of those fences. We're working with Rockford Pickleball Association on that. I think the submitted plans right now show an 8-foot fence on the back. We're discussing possibly raising that up to a 10-foot fence for a little bit of additional protection there and to keep the pickleballs in the courts. But I think that's a fair ask, a fair point. And that's something we can probably look at too to provide protection there. I know we're using netting up at the top of the quad, similar to how we've got it throughout the rest of the complex. So that's something that we could consider. And I don't know, Tom, if that's something that is under consideration already?
We've looked at.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
Tom Fryer with Progressive Companies. The intent for that field is to be focused on championship play. When you look at the distance in NCAA regulations for the fence, we're at NCAA regulations. When you look at the overplay and distance on that, along with the grade change, if somebody were to hit the pickleball courts from that, we probably should sign them to some major league team. I think with the fencing that we have at 8 feet around pickleball, and the fact that if they have a large pickleball event and tournament, it's probably not simultaneous with a championship softball game. I have a very good feel that in just, again, the dimensions that are there, that it should not be a substantial concern or issue.
Jack?
I'm happy that this is going in. About 6 months ago, I talked to the head of the planning department wondering why Plainfield had not put pickleball courts in, and found out that he had talked to you and said, hey, there's going to be pickleball courts here, so that's good. I have a process question, but it's probably premature, and it's also, plans are probably not been formulated, but I know that my grandson played travel ball quite a bit in the complex, and we appreciated it very much. At that point, there was a parking fee, nothing else. Have you had any idea as far as structure in terms of operation of pickleball and stuff like that?
As far as pickleball goes, that will be a public area. So the only way I see that they, again, this is a sequencing and scheduling of events thing. If there's a major tournament going in and there's a pay to park for that, and you want to go in and play pickleball on the public open areas, you're probably going to end up having to either negotiate with the person that's taking the tickets for paying for parking or pay for parking to go in. I'm anticipating that there's, 600 or 700 ball players in that complex and cars. You're probably going to look for someplace else to potentially go play pickleball that day also. But we haven't heard anything different from West Michigan Sports Commission on operations on that.
I can appreciate that. Yeah, okay, thanks. That's all I had. I appreciate very much what you're doing, and it adds a lot to the area.
Amen. My only issue is, not issue, is a comment, is that how blessed we are in the township to have two major regional sports facilities, the Whitecaps and now the sports complex that's continuing to grow. Those are major tourist attractions, and, we're blessed to be home for both of those. So, thanks to the team for your effort. Appreciate it.
Yes.
All right, I need a motion to approve.
I move that the Planning Commission grant site plan approval for the expansion of the Meyer Sports Complex as described in site plan dated October 15th, 2024, subject to the following conditions of approval. First, the application shall submit updated landscaping photometric plans prior to the issuance of a building permit. 2, the sanitary sewer lateral shall be inspected regularly. And 3, a stormwater permit and operation and maintenance agreement is required prior to final build-out.
Support.
Motion and support. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. So we're back to new 5D, which is a POD rezone with a public hearing. Brian, you want to read the applicant information, please?
I can do that. Project name, 5 Mile East Beltline PUD. Applicant, Mr. Dave Visser with Dave Visser Builders LLC. Project address, 3144 5 Mile Road, 4357 East Beltline Avenue, and 4341 East Beltline Avenue. Permanent parcel numbers, 41-10-34-228-061, 41-10-34-228-052, and 41-10-34-228-040. Size of site, approximately 3.14 acres combined. Project description and action requested of the Planning Commission to forward a favorable recommendation to the Township Board to rezone to the subject properties from R1B residential to R3 residential, and then immediately from R3 residential to PUD planned unit development to develop a 24-unit townhome condominium development. Public hearing is required.
Turn to staff.
All right, so brief overview here. The project, like Brian said, is a 24-unit condominium development with 4 unit buildings. So there'll be 6 4-unit buildings, both 2 stories. The plan before you would have to be rezoned from R1B to R3, which is our multifamily zoning district, and then immediately to PUD. The reason for that 2-step rezone is that the PUD is based on the underlying zoning district for density. So in order to have a multifamily development here, it has to be that R3, which allows 31 units by right on these parcels, or the PUD, which they're coming in and proposing 24 units. The master plan for these parcels was changed with the recent update that was done from commercial to mixed use, with an emphasis on multifamily for this corner specifically. We've gotten some pressure for like gas stations and more auto-oriented uses that would be high traffic, high intensity on this site, that we just don't think that it fits the area or fits the traffic in this corner. Overall, what the PUD does for this site is it does allow for a little bit of a better layout on site, a little bit cleaner. You see the R3 comparison plan in the plan set that was provided. It also allows us to kind of write in these areas of natural feature preservation. So if you've driven the site, there is, you know, a quite significant wooded patches along 5 Mile and onto Beltline. It allows the developers to preserve that tree line and work with the existing topography a little bit better. In terms of access, they are proposing just one access onto 5 Mile as far away from the intersection as possible. It's kind of ideal for this corner. They are also preserving a future cross connection through the back should this parcel to the south ever develop. We have spoken with MDOT, who has determined that access management for the Beltline in this area, there will only be one curb cut left for these parcels, the parcel to the south and Northern Dells, which is to the south of that. So they should all share one curb cut if that ever gets developed, and it may not. The fewer access points on Beltline, the better. So we were happy with that. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Nothing here. Is Mr. Visser here this evening? Or?
Yeah, yep.
Hey, he made it in.
Good evening, I'm Dave Visser, I'm the developer. Thanks for having us.
Address, please.
My address is 3919 Remembrance Road. Elizabeth did a great job of summing things up. Just for history, we've been working on this site with the staff for almost 6 months now. And so we've taken a lot of their input and gone through that, and we've had Feenstra Engineer put the layout in front of you today. We feel for all the reasons that we submitted, there's a lot of good reasons why we want to do what we're doing. We're really not asking for 31 sites like Elizabeth said. We're really asking for 24. We really don't want to do big 3-stall type style buildings. We want to preserve the trees. We've got the access all the way over as far away as we could. So we've tried to do everything that we could possibly do to make that site and not over infested either with units. So we feel we got a really nice building design, and we got a really nice product that we can put in your township. So we look forward to doing that. I've got 40 years of experience behind me doing that, and we look forward to your approval on the project. So thank you. Also, I have Dave Hanko here from Feenstra Engineering. Can answer any of your engineering questions because I'm not an engineer. Thank you.
All right, let's start with Jack.
I see that says an appropriate rezone, and I have no problem with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Jim, there is the public hearing. I didn't know if you were
I'm
going to do
sorry.
that after
All right,
or.
okay.
I take that back.
All right. All right, thank you, thank you. All right, at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to address the commission? And if you do, name, address, and provide your comments.
Good evening. My name's Steve Schmart. I live at 4430 Hackley Drive. It's a little bit north of this. There's probably not much I can say to stop this, but this is such a high traffic area. We love the beauty of this corner. That drive is probably directly across from Hackley that's being proposed there. We're strongly against that. Again, this is just our opinion. It's probably not going to stop this, but I just want it on record. We're strongly against this. Thanks.
Anyone else wish to address? All right, hearing none, I'm closing the public hearing. And then at this time, we'll start again. Jack?
I see that it says appropriate rezone.
Dennis?
I'm assuming the traffic study is gonna be done on this to make sure that it's not gonna be a overwhelming area. I don't know who can answer that.
What did you ask? I'm sorry.
Is there a traffic study or something that would enforce?
I don't know of any specific traffic studies that have been done. I know some traffic counts in the area. I looked that up. And in terms of intensity of uses, the trip counts that are generated by single-family condominiums, very, very small impact in the existing traffic patterns. It is much less than your commercial gas station, retail store, et cetera. Pete, do you have anything to add to that?
Just over the years, this had a fair number of people speculating what they could do with this site. We've met with the road commission, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 different times about this corner and as well as the apartments to the south. Their consideration hasn't been the traffic that would add on here. It was the stacking from the intersection on 5 Mile and people to be able to take a left turn and have enough space to do that kind of work. That's why they picked this specific spot for that drive. And that's why it was essential for them to get the Gazan property to where that single-family home is right now. So this is about the best location where they can put that drive. Eventually, we would like to connect through. We did direct them to the property or to the south. He's unwilling to sell the property at this point in time, and that's been consistent over the years. So someday maybe, but at this point in time, if he's not willing to do anything, that's kind of a closed door.
That's all I have.
Robin?
In review of all the drawings, I thought that this was a really nicely done, fitting this program into this lot and trying to be as sensitive to the existing trees, the existing grades, the difficulties in doing that. I see that Hackley, if that's the name of the road, is a couple hundred feet from the proposed entrance onto 5 Mile for this development. Hackley is much closer to 5 Mile than what this would be. So I don't really see, maybe I misunderstand the concern, but I don't see a direct interference between the two. And that's it.
Okay. Brian?
That was one of my questions, but also that lot to the south, can we bring up that previous screen? If we go down,
This
so,
one?
yeah, so he's unwilling to sell now, but someday, if it ever becomes available, have we landlocked that, or is that lot still viable for something?
Yeah, that's why we reserved that back cross connection to preserve the intention of that access management plan that we came up with for all of these lots.
That lot would still have value for something?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, so it would connect then to the valley as well. And they still have their residential curb cut onto the belt line right now. If it would be redeveloped as anything commercial, they would likely require that be closed, but
But
yeah.
then it can go in the valley. So the other driveway for the valley, which is to the west, how far is that from this new exit onto 5 Mile? About any?
Probably 100, 200 feet, maybe more. I'd have to pull up the aerial again. Let's see. Yeah.
Oh, it's, okay, it's a little farther than I thought. Okay. So it's sort of halfway in between the roads across the street. Okay, that's all I have.
Janelle?
So if the plot was developed to the south of this, am I understanding correctly that then all the traffic would flow through this to 5 Mile? Or would it be diverted off?
Yes, so their access would be through this site, and then connect to, Northern Dells and the valley.
So would we, if that was developed, then we would look at the issue of traffic at that point, if it was adding more traffic onto the 5 Mile at that entrance?
Yeah, we could certainly take a fresh look at traffic, and realistically, this site is best developed as an extension of this development.
Yep.
So maybe, a few more condo units or something like that. Did you have?
How,
way it's-
how big is that lot to the south?
3/4 of an acre off the cuff.
So it's small. Okay. Okay, thank you.
So the way this is laid out, it's gonna be a spaghetti route to get through. There's no bowling alley cut through. It's gonna be essentially serve the people that live there, that know to get through there. It won't be, a thoroughfare, for example. So, that's why we're comfortable in that lane. If it were to connect through the back, would have to come all the way up to the front, and essentially it would be like a service driver maneuvering lane for the purposes of future development.
I think this is a great use of that plot, and I'm really pleased that it's something like this that fits in with the neighborhood and everything adjacent rather than a gas station or something on that one. I don't think that this many people coming on to 5 Mile, living in a complex with 125, there's hardly any traffic leaving. It's never a problem, but I understand the concern about traffic sort of piling up on 5 Mile because of all the other development in the same place, but it doesn't seem like this is the one to be concerned about, and that's a much larger question, along that whole development that will have to be addressed at some point.
Anything else?
Can I ask one more question? Parking for residents, you said there's 24 units. Are those single or double stall garages? Have we gotten that far?
They're half and half. So the center units have a single stall garage, and then the outside units have a double stall garage. And they'll all have stacking before they even get into the streetways in front of their homes to carry the extra parking.
Okay. So we feel there's adequate parking for the number of residents that would be in here?
Yeah, I think so. And we also asked them to add this bit of extra,
yeah.
community parking. So.
Really like keeping the trees and everything. That's such an interesting corner.
Okay, we've got two motion actions here, one dealing with the residential rezone and the other the PUD. We'll take a motion for the residential rezone.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend to the Township Board, or recommend that the Township Board approve the ordinance to amend to rezone 3144 5 Mile Road, 4357 East Beltline Avenue, and 4341 East Beltline Avenue as described in the concept plan from R1B residential to R3 residential based on the findings of fact as outlined in the staff report and subject to the following conditions of approval. The applicant shall proceed immediately with a PUD planned unit development rezone as described in the concept plan submitted for this meeting.
Is there a second?
Support.
There's a motion, support. Any other discussion on the first motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On the PUD.
Listen to me again then. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the Township Board approve the ordinance to amend to rezone 3144 5 Mile Road, 4357 East Beltline Avenue, and 4341 East Beltline Avenue as described in the concept plan from R3 residential to PUD planned unit development based on the following 6 findings of fact. 1, the reduced acreage for a residential PUD from 5 acres to 3.14 is appropriate for this plan. 2, the proposed PUD complies with the intent and purpose and all qualifying conditions of section 28.01 and 28.02 of this chapter except as otherwise expressly provided. 3, the proposed rezoning is based on market-driven development principle and a well-documented need for housing in the township and beyond. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the Plainfield Charter Township Master Plan. The proposed rezoning will be harmonious with the character of the adjacent property. the surrounding use of land and the natural environment and is not, and will not be hazardous to the surrounding community. The proposed rezoning meets the intent and purpose of the township zoning ordinance and provides for a better design than under traditional zoning. The proposed project can be served by public utilities and other public services. To the best of the staff's knowledge, the rezoning satisfies all applicable local, state, and federal statutes and regulations. And 9, the rezoning is further supported by those reasons set forth by members of the Planning Commission staff and the applicant as reflected in the entire meeting record in this matter.
Their support. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. I believe that's everything under the agenda that got shifted around. Thanks to all who were here in attendance tonight. Staff comments.
Yes, at this point in time, we do not have anything for the December agenda. I expect when we get back, we'll probably be sending you a notice that the meeting will be canceled, but still have to wait a little bit in case we get an emergency site plan in. Anticipating pretty much a meeting-free December for you folks. That's all I have.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Okay,
Nice to
any
see you.
commissioners have any comments? Janelle?
I just thank the staff for the great work they do in providing the materials and everything, so.
Should I mention propane lane again, or we just let it go?
They still have those,
I don't know,
Tanks?
their sign is missing again,
what?
and I think the tanks are still back there.
All right.
But I noticed the sign was missing the other day. I don't know when that happened, but it is missing again.
Okay,
So,
I'll talk to the deputies about it.
An interesting development with AJ's. So I think that will actually be a good outcome for that. I think the Whitecaps will do a good job with that. So looking forward to that too. Do they need to, I mean, they can buy it, they don't need to do anything with us, right? That just goes through, as long as they're not changing anything?
Yeah, do you know if they're planning on doing any?
They haven't disclosed anything at this point. They can operate it as is. It's PUD already, so. I'm anticipating some changes, probably right off the bat. In most cases like this, it's administrative, like facade improvements and things like that. But they may do some change around, and if they do, we'll come back to you.
Robin?
No comments.
Dennis? Nothing. Jack?
I know we've done an awful lot of informational sessions on Reimagine Plainfield, and it seems like we're very redundant in having to perform more, but we keep having people coming in to say they never heard about it, and I wonder if we could take another look at ways in which we can, in future projects, we can do better information.
Absolutely, and we've been strategizing on how to do that to avoid situations. So, not everybody's going to be happy with it, but to at least make sure people feel like they've been heard in this regard. The other thing I want to let you know too is it's a working document over time, and we've found things that need to be tweaked to customize it to Plainfield Township, and so we're open to suggestions on this. And the beauty of it is we got a grant to update our ordinance, and this will be an opportunity to make some of these changes that we're hearing people complain about, or concerned about. So, or at least discuss them.
Good, I appreciate that.
Okay, everybody have a safe and wonderful time this Thanksgiving season, and enjoy, and I guess we'll see you next year.
Thank you.